The final head of household, HOH competition on Big Brother Season 27 has taken a dramatic turn. Morgan Pope won Part 1, while Ashley Hollis stunned Vince by winning Part 2. These results set up an intense showdown in the last HOH battle before the finale. This development changes the expected endgame. Vince was seen as a strong contender but now faces an uncertain path. Fans reacted strongly on social media as the live feeds captured emotional moments inside the house. Morgan wins Part 1, Ashley upsets Vince in Part 2. In the first part of the final HOH, Morgan Pope outlasted both Vince and Ashley in a tough endurance and balance challenge. Her win guaranteed her a direct spot in the Part 3 finale. This victory gave Morgan an early strategic advantage, allowing her to skip the risky second round. Part 2 turned into a head-to-head battle between Vince and Ashley Hollis. Vince initially built a big lead, reportedly around 20 minutes, but made a costly mistake by misreading the rules. Ashley capitalized and pulled off a surprise win. Buddy TV reported that this upset completely reshaped the power dynamic heading into the final HOH round. The competition was hosted by Frankie, a past Big Brother player, adding to the live feed excitement. After his loss, Vince appeared visibly shaken and emotional. Fans watching the feeds described him pacing, muttering, and calling himself an idiot for losing the lead. Morgan's calm dominance in Part 1 and Ashley's unexpected comeback in Part 2 created a thrilling finale scenario. If Morgan wins Part 3, she likely secures the entire game. If Ashley wins, she may cut Morgan and take Vince to the final 2, giving herself a better shot at the grand prize. Live feed viewers and Big Brother alumni quickly shared reactions online. Danielle Reyes praised Morgan's overall game but acknowledged Ashley's smart play. Social media lit up with memes and commentary about Vince's frustration and emotional breakdown. By the time the final head of household competition rolled around on Season 27, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Every clink of the cassette tape for the challenge music, every shuffle of feet on the wooden balcony, every hiccup of laughter from the jury house was amplified. The stakes were clear and cold as metal. The winner of Final HOH would determine the final 2 and almost certainly, who walked out with the $1 million prize. What no one expected was how dramatically the first 2 parts of the battle would rearrange the endgame. Part 1 began at dusk, when the housemates' shadows grew long and the cameras caught them in silhouettes. Morgan Pope, Vince Panaro, and Ashley Hollis stood on the stage. 3 finalists, 3 different paths to this moment. The twist for Part 1 was classic reality TV cruelty masquerading as fairness, endurance mixed with balance, a test that rewards physical grit and a steady center of gravity, but one that punishes small slips and bigger doubts. They climbed aboard their platforms, eyes flicking briefly at each other, then up at Frankie, the former player turned ephemeral oracle for this competition, who stood with a stopwatch and a grin that promised nothing good. Morgan had been quiet about her training, the sort of competitor who forged confidence in the background while the house debated loudly. Vince, in contrast, had carried himself like a man who'd counted his days, measured his breaths, catalogued wins. Ashley, the underdog in many eyes, had an easy smile that masked a meticulous, patient mind. The 3 of them were a study in different flavors of power. For Morgan, the platform felt like home. She straightened her shoulders, found a point on the ceiling to anchor her mind, and breathed slow and deep. The hours melted one by one. The crowd in the studio would have called it comfortable dominance. She moved with a rhythm that made endurance look like meditation. Vince tried to match it, jaw clenched, eyes frantic. Ashley's cheeks went hollow as she worked to conserve energy, counting breaths like beads on a rosary. Hoarse from the house's collective cheering, most of it via live feed whispers and jury-side murmurs, Frankie's stopwatch snapped. Morgan was the last to feel the tremor of exhaustion. Her platform outlasted them all. In Part 1, the result couldn't have been more decisive. Morgan Pope clinched the first prize, a direct ticket to Part 3. She would not have to risk herself in Part 2. She would watch the remaining duel from the sidelines, calm and brutal in its implications. When the buzzer sounded and Vince's platform dipped, he looked at Morgan with something like stunned reverence. Had she been that strong all along? Ashley, shaking but smiling, clapped for Morgan in a way that suggested both relief and a crate of fresh, delicious ambition. The house erupted in measured celebration, but this particular cheer had the metallic tang of something larger closing in. Morgan had just taken half the board, and now the rest of the game depended on a matchup she could live with, decide to her advantage, if she so chose. Part 2 was an entirely different beast. The producers loved to change the rules between rounds, to see who can be nimble enough to read a new rule mid-game and brave enough to exploit it. This round pitted Vince against Ashley in a head-to-head that was equal parts mental puzzle and nerve-wracking physicality. The twist? A time portion, a rule-laden checkpoint, and a penalty that could turn victory into vapor with a single misstep. Vince took an early lead that felt like destiny. He built up a cushion of 20 minutes. Some live feed viewers would later call it an insurmountable lead. He moved with the boldness of a man who understood risk. He had mapped the field, rehearsed the contingencies, and in his mind he had calculated the finish. The house began to lean toward Vince, predictions blossoming in whispered corners and jury-side breaths. Fans in online threads started drafting speeches. Then, a wrinkle. Rule misreading is the costliest sin a competitor can commit in Big Brother. Somewhere between instructions and the way the clock ticked, Vince misread a line, a minor clause with massive teeth. He adjusted too late, or perhaps he adjusted in precisely the wrong way. Ashley watched him commit the error. She took her breath, and like a sprinter who's been saving a final burst, she pushed. The live feed caught Vince's face as the realization dawned on him: the lead he'd hoarded was evaporating. That 20-minute advantage was no longer an armored rampart. It was a paper wall that the damp night wind could leak through. Ashley capitalized on the mistake with surgical calm. She didn't gloat or leap. She filled Vince's momentary gap and, with the steady hands of someone who practices patience as a strategy, she pulled off the upset. Buddy TV ran the headline the moment the feed split: Ashley upsets Vince in Part 2. The tone of the report wasn't malicious. It was, instead, the electric hum of a game recalibrating. The live feeds were a chorus of exclamations: "No way, that was wild, what did he do?" Overnight memes turned Vince's mistake into an anatomy lesson in humility. Social media is unforgiving and inventive. Someone doctored an image of a minute hand crying into a pillow. The house, meanwhile, was raw. Vince's reaction was the stuff of reality TV myth-making. He paced, a caged animal of his own emotions, muttering fragments into the living room cushions. The camera found him at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, hands in his hair, repeating a single word like an invocation: idiot. The feeds captured a man collapsing inward. It felt like watching a proud wrestler grapple with the idea that a single slip could define so much of what he had been working toward. There was anger, yes, but there was also an animal grief that made viewers, for a moment, feel complicated sympathy. Ashley, meanwhile, wandered the house as if she had found a secret corner of the map. Her victory was quiet, not because it lacked significance but because she was processing it the way winners who don't take victory for granted process things, slowly, methodically, with an eye toward the bigger chessboard. She hugged Morgan and then offered a nod to Vince. There was a dignity in the exchange, a recognition that the game had turned on a sliver and that now everyone would have to live in the aftershock. Danielle Reyes, an alum and occasional analyst who had been tweeting praise through the night, did what alumni do best: add context. In a clip shared by the feeds, she praised Morgan's overall game as the kind of slow, accumulating power that wins over juries, while acknowledging Ashley's move as smart and timely. "You don't always need to be the loudest player," Danielle said. "Sometimes you need to be the one who reads the moment and acts cleanly." Her commentary swelled across feeds, giving people a vocabulary for what they were watching: strategic patience versus social warmth, calculated risk versus steady endurance. The house, already divided into factions built over months, found itself rearranging like tectonic plates after an earthquake. If Morgan won Part 3, she would secure the crown with the terrifying finality of someone who had been allowed to sit out the messy middle and show up fresh at the finish line. The image on the feeds of Morgan's calm face became a totem: poised, unbothered, and precise. But if Ashley could beat Morgan in the final showdown, the implications were seismic. Ashley might choose to cut Morgan and take Vince to Final 2, a play that would pit social warmth and late momentum against Morgan's steady dominance. It would be messy and delicious. Fans online debated what the jury would value: strategic power or social empathy, cold execution or warm connection. The house had worn both faces across the season: alliances driven by spreadsheets and others sewn together by late-night conversations over cereal. Now the jury, untouched by the immediacy of the feeds, would weigh months of game into a single ballot each. The live feeds captured more than strategy, they captured human fallout. Vince's friends who had rallied around him had to reconcile their compassion with their sense of betrayal at a loss. Ashley's supporters found new reasons to cheer. Her victory wasn't flashy, but it was real. Morgan's admirers watched her with a mix of awe and prudent suspicion, Was she playing the long game, or had luck simply favored a steady hand? Frankie's presence as host added another layer. He was the bridge between eras, a player who had once been in the same sardine tin of pressure and now had the job of dishing out hope and heartbreak. There was a moment when he walked past the diary room and offered a small nod to Morgan, a recognition among veterans. He then steered cameras to Vince with a soft, professional demeanor that belied the human drama. Inside the jury house, conversations flickered with the electric question: who had earned their votes as players? Some jurors praised Morgan's consistent threat level. She had played a game that made people plan around her. Others favored Ashley's tactician move in Part 2, an asteroid strike that could flip outcomes and reward adaptability. And there were jurors who watched Vince's decline with the same mixture of pity and irritation. Pity because raw emotion can be a heavy tax on a competitor, irritation because a late-game misread had denied them a path they had imagined. The feeds became a mosaic of micro-scenes. In one, Morgan sat alone on the patio, eyes closed as if she were trying to hear the future. In another, Ashley and Danielle exchanged a quiet word about jury management, maps and lists strewn between them. There was a late-night confessional where Vince tried to unapack himself to another housemate and instead found himself retreating into silence. These vignettes stitched together the tapestry of a season's worth of choices, and the public devoured them with the same intensity they reserve for sport finals and election nights.